Hi, Martin here. Today I want to show you a modification I want to try out on the rear upper control arm on your 99 through 04 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now, not even a year ago, I did a video showing how to replace these bushings right here. Okay? And thought everything was done. That will be the end of it now for the rest of the life of this Jeep. No. I used AC Delco bushings and they failed after around 10 months. I noticed a noise in the back of the Jeep again. Well, it couldn't be the bushings. I'm thinking like the links for the sway bar or something like that, you know. And looking at all those bushings, everything looked fine. And I happened to look at these bushings again, and I'm like, oh my gosh. They are now, look at that. They are worse than the set that I pulled out and replaced. This is after less than 10,000 miles. The originals had like 120,000 plus, and they didn't look actually all that bad. And so don't buy these. Now, I'm thinking, how can we make that better? I mean, sure, we could find the factory ones and install those and the job would be done. But I'm also thinking about when you lift or lower one of these Jeeps, you're taking this arm and putting it in an unnatural state. You're gonna either flex it one way or the other and put excess bind on these bushings. They're not gonna sit at a nice level state. So what I came up with was, we got these weld-on Jonny joints. These are relatively inexpensive. And what I'm gonna do is press this out, try to get this in there, and then we got this replaced. All right, well, let's get started. All right, well, this is ever so slightly too big. It would be great if I could just tap it into place and maybe spot weld it. All right, well, let's see what it takes to get this bigger. Give this a try. What I got here is a 60 grit flapper disc. All right, now we'll test fit it. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Halfway in between here and right here. That's what I'm shooting for. I'm going to take it back out now and we'll drill it for this grease zerk so we're able to access that. And I'm going to be shooting like right through this area right here. Now I've got to make the hole big enough that we're able to pass the grease gun fitting through there, which that one is. That'll be perfect right there. And then the other hole needs to be large enough that we can get the grease zerk on itself. So when we bolt it on, it'll pass through here and bolt on to the joint. Alright, now drive this in here, making sure this hole is lined up with the hole that you drilled in here. Okay, I got the outer part of the joint pressed in here. I cleaned off the paint right there, and I'm just going to apply a couple welds on both sides, more of a spot weld. You'll still be able to cut them if you ever needed to get this out of here and replace it. Okay, I'll get it welded up, and then I'll get the other side done. Alright, first install the one washer. Apply a small amount of grease. Now, when installing these, make sure you get the two halves mated up like they're supposed to be. You will not get them installed if they are not mated properly, like this is. They got to be locked together like that when they go in. Alright, that Jonny joint's giving me a little trouble. To get the snap ring on there, you got to almost compress everything. And, you know, the bushing inside that Jonny joint and everything. So what I did is I got out my ball joint installation tool. And I'm using like a couple of these pieces right here, and a nice long bolt that I found, and a socket. Now I'll show you what I'm doing here. Alright, I got the bolt in the socket here. Pass those through the joint. You take these two pieces and a nut and bring them up from below. Now this cup is bigger than the joint itself. That's what you want. Alright, now as I tighten this down, you're going to actually see this washer go down right there. There we go. Now all that's left is to install that grease zerk. Okay, I'm taking the socket here. I shoved a small piece of fabric in here so it takes up some room so the threads stick out. Alright, now that we got it assembled, now there's a couple things about it. For one, the Jonny joint is not as tall as the original, by right around 20 millimeters, 3/4 of an inch. So we need to put a spacer in there to make up for that distance. So for me, the angle was down like this. Now if I put that spacer on the bottom side of that joint, it's going to raise it up like that. Bring it more to a level. Now I lowered the vehicle 1 inch, actually it's 1.3, so that additional 3/4 of an inch is going to bring it almost to a perfect level again, where the arm would sit naturally. And this would give you the most articulation one way and the other. I came up with an idea as far as what to use for a spacer, and that's what's left over of the original bushing, and that's this piece right here. Now this actually, the washer part of it, what looks like a washer, it comes in quite handy, because on the top part of the where this bolts into place on the vehicle, it has a nut that has it's fixed in there. It's not coming out, but it has movement from side to side, so it makes it easier to bolt up into place. But it leaves a large hole up there, so you do need some type of washer. And since I need 3/4 of an inch, I went ahead and cut that 3/4 of an inch off. Now what's kind of cool about it is that part is like pressed in to that part. So it works out kind of cool for me, because I'm going to want this washer on the top side, but I want the spacer on the bottom side in my situation. Alright, to get these two halves separated, I just stick a 21 millimeter wrench on there, and it does turn, and then you can just start, there you go, get a screwdriver up underneath it and pull the two halves apart. Now I need to take a flapper disc, and I'm going to grind this down flat. I got it all put together. I went ahead and shot a coat of paint on it. You know, she looks like brand new. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this installed, and I'll show you me putting it in. And if you're curious on how to get one out of there, and a more detailed as far as remove and replace, I will put a link up above or down below of a video I did before where I removed and replaced, put new bushings in, and a new ball joint. So you can check that video out. Let's get this thing installed, and then we'll take it for a test drive and see how it works. Now, when removing and replacing these arms, you don't need to remove any components like the springs or shocks or anything like that. You just got to get enough clearance. Raise the vehicle up high enough. And there you can see I relocated the battery box. I'll put a link to that. Placing the washer from the bushing on the top side of the Jonny joint, and now the spacer down below. This will take just a few moments because you got to make sure you get them lined up properly, especially that top washer. And then when you put this bolt in, just get it snug. Do not tighten. Make sure you get both bolts in before you tighten them down. You can see I'm moving the arm up and down. I've already seen a problem. I have limited motion. I don't have the motion I did have before, the articulation. I think for my particular vehicle it's going to work fine. For a lowered vehicle, this is not going to work on a raised Jeep or where you're looking for a lot of articulation. Alright, I got the vehicle sitting back down on the ground, and now you can see that the arm sits nice and horizontal. Anyway, a lot more than it used to. Right here you can see the grease zerk right there, that you can get to it real easily. And then the one on the other side is right there. Alright, with the vehicle all put back together, now, being that I have a limited suspension travel, and I don't necessarily need that much, because this is a lowered vehicle, it's not a rock crawler, I do not need all that articulation. But what I'm going to do, so I'm not hard on the Jonny joints, I'm not ever hitting that limit of its travel, I'm going to install a set of Grant limit straps. I went ahead and pre-measured this and got these ordered. I'll pull this tire off of here and show you how I hooked them up. Alright, with the tire removed right here, you can see that I welded a tab on here. I bought this as a pre-fabbed weld-on type of tab with the hole already pre-drilled. It's a 1/2 inch hole. And then by bolting it right here to the frame, and the other location is down here on the shock. Alright, with the shock bolt removed, I cut the spacer, and this is also from what's left over from that bushing. The hole in the bushing turned out to be the perfect size as well. Now, when bolting this on here, normally for a strap, you do not want the bolt to be absolutely tight. You want it to have some free play. But being that I have it bolted to the shock, I need to bolt it down tight. But I got to make sure that the strap is perfectly square. Right there, I'm checking it for squareness to make sure when it's at full extension that it pulls on the strap properly. Now on this one here, I'm able to put a lock nut on the back side, torque it down to where it's just got a little bit of slop in it. And that's the way you actually want this. There, I'm checking it, see? And that's how you want to have your limit strap, so it has a little bit of play. With a jack stand on the chassis, I'm lowering the hydraulic jack to check for clearances, making sure everything looks good on the strap. See, there's no pinch points here. I got good clearance. And the strap is almost perfectly straight up and down. I've been driving it now for a month, and I like them. There's nothing ill about it, you know. Of course, it's only going to probably work on your lowered Jeeps because of the lack of articulation. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for watching, and if you've never subscribed to me before, hit that subscribe button right down there and the little bell symbol right next to it. And I put a couple links down below of the parts that I used to do this mod. All right. Thanks again.